It's a pleasure to be back talking about the water bill again. We Liberal Democrats and in committee and on the floor of this House report stage, I think, put down a grand total of, I think, 56 amendments. So what's two more? But we also, as the Honourable Member for Epping Forest has said, that believe this bill to be a good thing and wish to see it on the statute book. We don't feel it goes far enough, and we have the opportunity, just looking at the two amendments before us today, to consider that a little more. When it comes to the first amendment we are considering today, Madam Deputy Speaker, so the government wants to introduce financial reporting requirements for water companies. The report should be a concise, intelligible and up-to-date overview of the financial position of each undertaker, namely a water company, including information on share capital and debt, including any significant changes that may have happened in the last 12 months or expected changes in the 12 months to come, and they to be required once a year. We very much welcome this amendment. We tabled many like it, retain aspects of these proposals both at committee stage and at report stage. We are bound to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we feel they were better amendments, more ambitious and more far-reaching. But as with much of this water bill, it is a decent start, and so we don't want to stand in the way. But just to clarify, we did propose a variety of amendments to this bill up to this point. For example, calling for Ofwat to be made responsible for ensuring financial stability and financial stability duty upon water companies. We call for the banning of bonuses for water company bosses whose companies were performing poorly and are not just on environmental duties but with regard to financial stability and water quality also. And then, of course, in this place we move to a vote with the permission of the Chair on a ban on water companies making customers pay for the debt that they had at the point of bankruptcy, and instead that matter should be paid for, those debts should be paid for by investors who've taken risks, and that's right. And we're disappointed the government objected, voted against us on that, and indeed the Conservative Party sat on their hands and wouldn't support bill payers in that instance. This is really important, and it's live. In my communities in the northwest of England, in Westmoreland, 11% of bill payers' bills are being paid just to service the debt of United Utilities, and yet in other parts of the country, like Thames Water, for example, that is around 35% and potentially even more. We've also called not just for scrutiny of the water companies when it comes to their finances, but also other areas as well. And this is an area in which this bill has absolutely moved things in the right direction, but not radically enough. We have, for instance, sought to encourage and persuade, without success, the committee and both Labour and Conservative front benches, that it'd be wise to have environmental experts on the boards of water companies, and that the very laudable and very positive move the government's making towards a live database that citizen scientists can scrutinise. We asked, again at committee stage, that should be a historic database, searchable in retrospect, not just live. Because if I think about wonderful organisations in my constituency, replicated around the country, of course, as well, but the Eden Rivers Trust, the South Lakes Rivers Trust, the Clean River Kent campaign, Save Windermere, organisations like that who, within their free time would be monitoring this database to see where lakes are. Unless they're able to look at it 24/7 and do nothing else in their lives, some things may well get past them. So, for example, between 21 and 23, there were 120 million litres of sewage pumped into Windermere Lake without United Utilities reporting it. We are reliant upon citizen scientists knowing about this stuff, and having a great database is only really going to do the job if it's searchable in retrospect as well. So scrutiny and transparency is vital on the finances, but also when it comes to environmental matters too. But on that, the first of the amendments we're looking at today, we are satisfied the government amendment does provide increased transparency on water company finance, and therefore we won't be making a nuisance of ourselves on that particular issue on this particular occasion. Moving to the second of the amendments in front of us, the Honourable Member for Epping Forest rightly highlights and reminds people of my distaste for not having stuff on the face of the bill, and our statutory instruments are not the best way of doing things. Despite that fact, I'm even more of a fan of making sure there's proper scrutiny in this place of those who are meant to be scrutinising our water companies, namely those at Ofwat. So, oddly enough, throughout the process of this bill so far. Liberal Democrats have made proposals, good, radical, environmentally minded proposals in the interest of our constituents and our waterways. The government have understandably stuck to their guns and voted against us, but the official opposition has abstained on pretty much absolutely everything, including, it would appear, on their own amendment today, when we actually want to vote for it. Because we take the view, for all of my reticence and our reticence of not having important matters on the face of the bill, we also think that this is an issue where an amendment which proposed in the other place by my, just like my honourable former neighbour here for Epping Forest today, but Lord Blencathra, my right honourable neighbour but one in the past, for former Penrith and the Border, and a very, very accomplished parliamentarian. What he's seeking to do, this amendment will require increased parliamentary scrutiny of Ofwat when signing off water company bonuses. And that is a huge concern to me, and I think to most people around this country, and definitely in my constituency. We have, for example, a situation with record bonuses being paid around the country to senior executives, when there's not a single stretch. There's no doubt whatsoever, however, that what we're looking at now is a massively changed situation. So why does the public care so much about this issue than was the case 5 or 6 years ago? And I say this neutrally because we were in the European Union, and before then we had different levels of scrutiny, and also because this House went through the process of basically lifting the bonnet to see what was already acceptable. At that point, people in this place and around the country became utterly outraged at what was permissible. So yeah, parties of all sides take a responsibility, but not least the party that privatised the industry in the first place and let the cat out of the bag in this respect. But Ofwat need to be scrutinised themselves. That's the thing that I find most frustrating. And us being not in the European Union now means that our own regulations are not scrutinised from outside. So if we don't do it, who is going to? And we've heard many times of Ofwat's failure to properly scrutinise and hold to account the water companies. We heard on more than one occasion in committee and in this place as well of the £164 million worth of fines Ofwat have levied against 3 water companies that 4 years on, of which they have collected precisely £0 and 0 pence. So our argument throughout this process is that Ofwat, containing many very good and valuable people working their hardest, is nevertheless a regulator not fit for purpose. And the consequences of this amendment would be to allow there to be to force the Ofwat to give a 6-month notice of bonuses that they had signed off, rather than the 7 days that the government now wants to do. That is inadequate. I will happily give way.
I'm grateful to the honourable member for giving way. I'm slightly curious at the 11th hour why the third party now is changing their position. In the other place, when this amendment was taken to a vote, the Liberal Democrats abstained on 2 occasions. So now they're playing political games and actually risking the progress of this bill. The amendment, as it stated, was to have a statutory instrument to increase parliamentary scrutiny and accountability. The government has moved some way, not as far as we would like, but the third party are now playing political games and risk the progress of a bill trying to improve the state of our waters.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. I can do maths, in which case I know there's absolutely no threat whatsoever to the progress of this bill, because I know what the numbers will be roughly when and if we divide on this matter. But that doesn't. I am not a late convert. I am an early convert long before him to the importance of scrutiny. And so it's important for us to make the case that, imperfect though this is, it is far better for this House to be given 6 months of notice of Ofwat's intention to allow bonuses than 7 days. Surely that is better. That is why we insist as we do. So this is Parliament scrutinising Ofwat because of Ofwat's failure to scrutinise the water companies. And that is our simple point here, and it is why we have proposed much more radical reform throughout the whole of this process, including abolishing Ofwat altogether. It's not the fault of the people who work for the organisation specifically, but when you think about regulation of the water industry, which is fragmented across parts of the EA, Ofwat and other agencies as well, without the powers that they require, without the resources that they need, of course the water companies run rings around them, and it is our constituents and our waterways, our lakes, our rivers and our coastal areas that bear the brunt and suffer. And so we are, oh, go on, yes.
I'm very grateful to the honourable member for giving way again. And he stands up and he talks about the number of fantastic amendments that the third-party made at committee stage, many of which were so poorly worded that they weren't actually worth voting on. But his particular amendment about abolishing Ofwat actually had no suggestion about what they would replace it with, how much it would cost. It didn't. In the clauses of the bill, how much it would cost, how long it would take. So when we're wanting Ofwat to have the teeth to actually hold water companies to account, they were proposing getting rid of it. But again, as the party of protest, not offering any credible solutions.
Yes, well, first of all, if he'd paid more attention, he would know that we propose a Clean Water Authority, which would gather up all the powers of Ofwat and the environmental regulatory powers, water regulatory powers of the Environment Agency. And again, there is a little bit of a pattern, and I say this gently, both in opposition and in government. The Conservative Party shows greater levels of fury and anger about Liberal Democrats campaigning to clean up our waterways than they do about the fact that our waterways are full of poop in the first place. And so I will finish, and no, I've done two, so that will do. And I will finish this. And my simple comment is this, that this is a bill which will do good, and we're supportive of it, and we only wish to trouble the House a short time to make sure greater scrutiny is brought in. We've accepted throughout the whole of this process, with some reluctance, the Minister and the Government as a whole's position that this is part one, and that part two is to come, and the review led by Sir John Cunliffe is going to consider potentially more radical action. We hope that's the case, and on that basis, that's how we shall engage with things. So I have, Madam Deputy Speaker, in my hand some pieces of paper which I propose to send to Sir John Cunliffe, tightening up on some of the, as has been said, smorgasbord of amendments, because we care deeply about our waterways. For the Member of Parliament, I am honoured to be representing the bulk of the English Lake District, so many lakes and so many rivers, and our coastal areas in Morecambe Bay as well. The quality of our waterways is deeply personal to me and to our communities, and so we shall continue unashamedly to campaign for something far better for our constituents and indeed for our water right across the United Kingdom.